The clock struck 11:45 p.m. at Ouagadougou airport, and the air was thick with tension. Outside, the African night sky glittered with stars, but inside the VIP lounge, a storm was brewing. 17 suitcases sat in the center of the room, their black leather gleaming under the dim lights. Each one held secrets that could shake a nation. Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's young and fearless leader, stood at the head of a polished table, his eyes sharp, his voice steady. Around him were his trusted allies, Colonel Madu Komparé, the intelligence chief with a knack for uncovering truths, Aminata Traoré, the justice minister whose calm demeanor hid a fiery resolve, and Ousmane Dio, the airport director who'd seen it all but never anything like this. Across from them, sweating through his tailored suit, was French Ambassador Jacques Dubois. His diplomatic smile had vanished, replaced by a nervous twitch. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of a French diplomatic plane waiting on the runway, a plane that wasn't going anywhere tonight. This wasn't just another night at the airport. This was the night Burkina Faso would confront its past and fight for its future. Ibrahim Traoré placed a list on the table. 17 names, written in bold ink, stared back at them. "This," he said, his voice low but firm, "is the price of our gold." Everyone in the room knew what he meant. Burkina Faso's wealth, its gold, its uranium, its untapped oil, had been plundered for decades. Foreign powers, hidden behind diplomatic immunity and shady deals, had bled the country dry. But tonight, Traoré wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to expose. The suitcases, loaded onto that French plane under the cover of night, weren't just luggage. They were evidence of betrayal, greed, and a plot to keep Burkina Faso under control. The Red Beret soldiers, Traoré's elite guard, had sealed off every exit. Armored vehicles surrounded the plane. No one was leaving until the truth came out. Dubois shifted in his seat, his hands trembling slightly. "Mr. President, this is a misunderstanding," he stammered. "Diplomatic immunity protects—" Traoré raised a hand, cutting him off. "Immunity doesn't cover theft," he said, his words slicing through the room like a blade. Colonel Komparé opened a thick file, pulling out grainy security camera photos. 10:47 p.m., he began, his voice like gravel. 3 French embassy vehicles enter the airport. 11:15 p.m. These 17 suitcases are loaded onto the plane. 11:38 p.m. You, Ambassador Dubois, arrive in the VIP lounge. He slid the photos across the table. Dubois' face paled. The images showed him overseeing the loading, his silhouette unmistakable. "This is diplomatic cargo," Dubois protested, his voice cracking. Aminata leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "The Vienna Convention doesn't allow weapons, drugs, or stolen goods in diplomatic cargo," she said. "So what's in these suitcases, Ambassador?" Dubois' mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes darted to the door, where 2 soldiers stood like statues. There was no escape. Traoré gave a single nod. "Open them," he said. The weight of those 2 words filled the room, and everyone held their breath. 2 soldiers hoisted the first suitcase onto the table. It was heavy, sealed with diplomatic tape. Komparé snapped a photo of the seal. "Evidence," he said, so no one could deny what was about to happen. The lock clicked open, and the lid creaked upward. Ousmane Dio let out a low whistle. "My God," he muttered. The suitcase was packed with neat stacks of euro banknotes, each bundle wrapped with French central bank seals. Komparé slipped on gloves and lifted one stack. 10,000 euros per bundle, he said, counting quickly. 1 million total. Traoré reached into a side compartment and pulled out something else. Gold bars, each stamped with Burkina Faso's emblem. "Our gold," he said, holding one up. "Mined by our people, stolen by yours." Dubois' face was ashen now, his excuses crumbling. "I didn't know," he whispered. "This was embassy staff acting alone." Aminata's voice cut through. "Don't lie," she said sharply. "These bars were mined last month. No export records. Who got paid?" The second suitcase revealed documents, hundreds of pages glowing faintly under Komparé's UV light. Originals, he said, stunned. Not copies. Traoré flipped through them, his face hardening. Mining maps, uranium deposits, even details of oil fields so secret only 5 people in the country knew about them. This is our future, he said, his voice heavy with betrayal. And you were selling it. The third suitcase held photographs, compromising, images of Burkina Faso's officials, ministers, generals, even governors' families caught in moments of weakness, nightclubs in Paris, bank meetings in Geneva, shopping sprees paid for by French companies, a blackmail operation laid bare. The fourth suitcase was even darker, spy equipment from tiny cameras to drones the size of sparrows, some marked with NSA logos. American tech in French hands, Traoré said, his voice cold. Used against us. Each suitcase peeled back another layer of a conspiracy that stretched from Ouagadougou to Paris, implicating not just France but a network of traitors within Burkina Faso itself. By the time they reached the sixth suitcase, the room was suffocating with tension. Inside were military secrets, Burkina Faso's troop deployments, weapons inventories, even the combination to the general staff's safe. Komparé's hands shook as he read. Only 4 people have access to this, he said. Traoré's eyes darkened. You forgot Mariam, he said. The cleaning lady, 20 years in the general staff office, invisible to everyone. But she sees everything. The realization hit like a punch. The enemy wasn't just outside, it was within. The seventh suitcase spilled out cash in dollars, euros, pounds, even yuan. A bribery fund tailored to every taste. The eighth held luxury gifts, watches, jewelry, gadgets, with notes addressed to officials' families. They're buying our people, Aminata said, her voice thick with disgust. Not just leaders, but their wives, their children. The ninth suitcase was personal. Traoré's medical records, private meeting transcripts, even photos from his home. Someone close had betrayed him. But who? As they moved to the 10th suitcase, filled with scientific reports and geological surveys, the scope of the plot became clear. This wasn't just theft. It was a plan to control Burkina Faso's future. Propaganda in the 11th suitcase painted a puppet leader, Laurent Komparé, as the country's savior. He's alive? Komparé asked, shocked. Traoré nodded. Hiding in Paris, waiting for his moment. The 12th suitcase held poisons, vials designed to mimic heart attacks or strokes, an assassination kit. Traoré's name was on the list. The room spun with the weight of it all. 13 suitcases down, 4 to go, and each one was worse than the last. Hard drives in the 14th held backups of Burkina Faso's entire digital infrastructure, banks, telecoms, power grids. A cyber weapon to cripple the nation. The 15th listed thousands of names, students, journalists, activists, marked for arrest or worse. Traoré's name was first, coded with a single letter, U. To be killed. The 16th suitcase mapped every military base, every strategic point in the country, down to the license plates on fuel trucks. An invasion plan, ready to go. Traoré's voice was steady, but his hands gripped the table. They've been planning this for years, he said, since Sankara. The mention of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's murdered revolutionary, hung heavy. Everyone knew what was coming. The 17th suitcase held a single file labeled Operation Sankara. Traoré opened it, and the room went still. Pages detailed the 1987 assassination, French agents, CIA liaisons, Burkinabe traitors. And then a second phase, targeting Traoré, Sankara's heir, to stop his vision of a free Burkina Faso. The file listed 17 names, traitors bought to betray their country. Traoré closed the file, his face unreadable. He turned to Dubois. You thought you could do it again, he said. Kill our leaders, steal our wealth, control our future. Dubois was silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Traoré walked to the window. Dawn was breaking, the African sun rising over the horizon. "This ends tonight," he said. He turned to Komparé. "Arrest the 17 now." To Aminata. "Call Parliament. The people will see this." To Dio. "Shut the airport. No one leaves." And to Dubois. "You'll take a message to Paris, every document, every photo, every secret. The world will know." The ambassador's face crumpled. Outside, the plane's engines roared, but it wasn't going anywhere. The soldiers tightened their grip. Traoré looked at the suitcases, then at his team. "We're not just opening suitcases," he said. "We're opening our nation's eyes." But as the first rays of sunlight hit the lounge, a phone rang. Komparé answered, his face going pale. "Mr. President," he whispered. "Laurent Komparé. He's here, at the border, with mercenaries." The room froze. Traoré's eyes narrowed. Was this the end? Or just the beginning? The phone in Colonel Komparé hand trembled as he relayed the news. Laurent Komparé, the ghost from Burkina Faso's past, was at the border with 200 mercenaries, armed and ready to strike. The VIP lounge at Ouagadougou airport went deathly quiet. Ibrahim Traoré's eyes locked onto the 17 suitcases, each one a piece of a puzzle that had just grown darker. The French ambassador Jacques Dubois slumped in his chair, his face a mix of fear and guilt. He knew more than he was saying, and Traoré could see it. "Colonel," Traoré said, his voice steady despite the chaos threatening to erupt. "Get me details. Numbers, weapons, location, now." Komparé nodded and stepped away, barking orders into his radio. Aminata Traoré, the justice minister, clenched her fists, her mind racing. "This isn't just about the suitcases," she said. "They've been planning a coup. Komparé's their puppet." Ousmane Dio, the airport director, wiped sweat from his brow. "Mr. President, if they're at the border, they could be here by dawn." Traoré turned to the window, where the first light of the African sun was painting the sky red. "Then we don't have much time," he said, "but they've underestimated us. Again." Outside, the red beret soldiers tightened their grip on the airport. The French plane on the runway was still grounded, its engines idling like a trapped animal. Traoré's mind flashed back to the documents in the 17th suitcase, the file labeled Operation Sankara. It wasn't just about Thomas Sankara's assassination in 1987. It was a blueprint for control, a plan to crush anyone who dared follow in his footsteps. Traoré was that man, and the 17 names listed as traitors were proof that the enemy wasn't just foreign. It was inside Burkina Faso, woven into the very fabric of the nation. He thought of Mariam, the cleaning lady who'd worked in the General Staff Office for 20 years. Invisible, trusted, but secretly feeding secrets to France. Then there was Pascal Urago, the geology director whose name was on the list. He'd sold maps of unannounced oil fields for a price. And the defense minister who'd left that secure meeting after 5 minutes, claiming an urgent call. Traoré's heart sank. Betrayal stung deeper when it came from those you trusted. Komparé returned, his face grim. "Komparé's group is 50 miles from the border, moving fast. They've got assault rifles, RPGs, and vehicles, French-made. By the looks of it, our border patrol is outnumbered." Traoré's jaw tightened. "Mobilize the reserves. Call Mali and Niger. We have defense pacts for a reason." Aminata hesitated. "Mr. President, if we pull troops to the border, we leave the capital vulnerable. What if there's a second attack planned here?" She was right. The suitcases had revealed a network. Spies, blackmail, poisons. This wasn't just a border skirmish. It was a coordinated assault on Burkina Faso's soul. Traoré turned to Dubois, who was trying to shrink into his chair. "Who's funding Komparé?" he demanded. Dubois shook his head. "I'm just a diplomat. I don't." Traoré slammed his fist on the table, making the suitcases rattle. "You loaded these yourself, you knew." Dubois flinched, his eyes darting to the soldiers at the door. I was following orders," he whispered. "Paris. They wanted control. The gold, the oil, it's too valuable. Traore leaned, and close. And my life? Was that just collateral damage? Aminata opened the 15th suitcase again, pulling out the list of names marked for elimination. Her hands shook as she read. Journalists, students, teachers. They're targeting anyone who speaks out. This isn't just about you, Ibrahim. It's about silencing a generation. Ousmane Dio paced, his mind on the airport. If Komparé takes the capital, this place becomes a war zone. We need to move these suitcases, secure the evidence. Traoré nodded. Get them to the palace, under guard. The people need to see this. But even as he spoke, a new worry gnawed at him. The 9th suitcase had contained his personal records, medical reports, private conversations. Someone close was leaking information. Was it the defense minister, or someone even closer? He glanced at Komparé, who'd been with him since the beginning. Could he trust him? Doubt was a poison, and it was spreading. Outside, the airport was a fortress. Red Berets patrolled the perimeter, their radios crackling with updates. In the city, word was spreading. People whispered about the suitcases, about Traoré standing up to France. A young journalist, Aisha Zongo, had caught wind of the standoff and was already outside the airport, live streaming on her phone. Burkina Faso is awake, she told her followers, her voice trembling with excitement. Our president is fighting for us. They can't steal our gold anymore. Her video was going viral, the hashtag, Pardon 17 suitcases trending across Africa. But Aisha didn't know she was on the list in the 15th suitcase marked with an S for exile. Across town, a group of students gathered, inspired by her words. They painted signs, Our gold, our future. One of them, a 19-year-old named Kwame, had lost his father in the gold mines. This is for him, he told his friends, holding up a flag. No more exploitation. Their energy was electric, but none of them knew about Komparé's mercenaries closing in. Back in the VIP lounge, Komparé radio buzzed again. Mr. President, we've got a problem, he said. One of our informants at the border just reported a second group. Smaller, but heavily armed. They're not with Komparé, they're local. Traoré's blood ran cold. Local. The 17 traitors weren't just names on a list. They were active, moving against him. He thought of the defense minister again. That urgent call during the secure meeting. Had it been a signal? Find him, Traoré ordered. Now. Komparé hesitated. He's not answering his phone. His office says he's at home, sick. Aminata's eyes widened. Sick? Or hiding? Traoré didn't have time to answer. A loud thud echoed from the runway. The soldiers outside shouted and gunfire erupted. Dubois jumped, his face white. What's happening? He stammered. Ousmane ran to the window. The plane, it's trying to take off. Traoré's heart pounded. The evidence was safe, but if that plane escaped, the truth might never reach the world. Komparé grabbed his radio. Stop that plane, shoot the tires if you have to. The Red Berets sprang into action, their boots pounding the tarmac. Traoré turned to Dubois, his voice low and dangerous. You knew they'd try this, didn't you? Dubois shook his head frantically, but his eyes betrayed him. Aminata grabbed a file from the second suitcase, mining contracts with forged signatures. These have your name on them, she said, shoving them toward Dubois. You were going to sell our oil fields before we even knew we had them. Traoré's mind raced. The suitcases were just the beginning. Komparé at the border, traitors in the capital, a plane trying to escape. It was all connected. And somewhere in the shadows was Laurent Komparé, the man France had been grooming to replace him. The same man who'd been declared dead in 2019, now back to finish what started in 1987. The gunfire outside stopped, replaced by shouts. A soldier burst into the lounge. The plane's grounded, sir. Tires are out. The pilot's in custody. Traoré exhaled, but the relief was short-lived. Komparé radio crackled again. Mr. President, Komparé's men are 30 miles out, and we've got reports of a riot in the city. Someone's stirring up trouble. Traoré's eyes met Aminata's. The traitors, she said. They're making their move. He nodded. Get the suitcases to the palace. Broadcast everything, live. The people need to know. Aisha's live stream was still going, her voice now reaching millions. Burkina Faso, stand up, she cried. They can't silence us. But as Traoré prepared to leave the airport, a new message came through Komparé's radio. It was the defense minister's voice, panicked and distant. Ibrahim, I'm sorry, he said. They have my family, they're coming for you. The line went dead. Traoré froze, the weight of the betrayal hitting him like a wave. The suitcases were open, but the fight was far from over. Komparé was closing in, the capital was on edge, and someone close was still watching. Who would strike first? The air in the VIP lounge was electric, the weight of the defense minister's words hanging like smoke. They have my family. They're coming for you. Ibrahim Traoré's face was stone, but his mind was racing. The 17 suitcases, now stacked like a monument to betrayal, held the truth about Burkina Faso's stolen wealth, gold, oil, secrets. But Laurent Komparé's mercenaries were closing in, just 30 miles from the border, and riots were sparking in Ouagadougou's streets. Someone was pulling strings, and the defense minister's confession confirmed it. The 17 traitors weren't just names on a list. They were active, deadly, and close. Colonel Madou Kabore gripped his radio, waiting for updates, while Justice Minister Aminata Traoré clutched the list from the 15th suitcase, her eyes scanning the names marked for death. Airport Director Ousmane Dio was already coordinating the transfer of the suitcases to the palace, but his hands shook as he barked orders. The French ambassador, Jacques Dubois, sat frozen, knowing his role in this conspiracy was exposed. Traoré turned to him, his voice low. You thought you could break us, he said. But Burkina Faso is awake now. Kabore's radio crackled with new intel. Mr. President, the rioters are armed. They're heading for the palace, and Komparé's men are moving faster, 20 miles out. Traoré's heart pounded. The capital was a powder keg, and the traitors were lighting the fuse. He thought of Aisha Zongo, the journalist live streaming outside, her voice rallying millions with 17 suitcases. She was on the list, marked for exile, but she didn't know it. And Kwame, the student painting signs for his father's memory, was out there too, unaware of the danger. Traoré made a decision. Aminata, get to the palace, start the broadcast, show the suitcases, every document, every gold bar the world needs to see. Aminata hesitated. What about you? Traoré's eyes burned. I'm going to the border. Komparé wants me. He'll get me. Kabore stepped forward. Sir, that's suicide. Traoré shook his head. No, it's leadership. As the suitcases were loaded into armored trucks, Traoré gathered a small team of red berets and headed for the border. The African sun was high now, baking the dusty roads. In the capital, Aisha's livestream was a beacon, her voice cutting through the chaos. They tried to steal our gold, our future, she shouted, holding up her phone. But we're fighting back. The students around her chanted, their signs waving, our gold, our future. But then, gunshots rang out. The crowd scattered as masked men, local, not mercenaries, emerged from the shadows. One grabbed Aisha, yanking her phone away. You're on the list, he hissed. Kwame lunged, tackling the man, but more appeared. The 15th suitcases list was coming to life, and the traitors were making their move. At the palace, Aminata set up the broadcast. The suitcases were laid out, their contents displayed like evidence in a trial. Cameras rolled as she spoke to the nation. These 17 suitcases hold the truth, she said, her voice steady. Gold stolen from our mines. Documents exposing our oil fields. Plans to kill our president. She held up the Operation Sankara file, its pages detailing the 1987 assassination and the plot against Traoré. Social media exploded. 17 suitcases trended worldwide. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, crowds gathered, chanting for their own independence. The African awakening Traore had sparked was spreading, but the cost was high. Back at the border, Traore's convoy sped through the savannah. Komparé at his side relayed updates. Komparé's men are 10 miles out. Our reinforcements from Mali are close, but not close enough. Traore gripped his rifle. Then we hold the line. The clash came at dusk. Komparé's mercenaries, armed with French weapons, stormed a border checkpoint. Traoré's red berets fought back, their gunfire lighting up the fading sky. Traoré was in the thick of it, shouting orders, his presence rallying his men. Komparé, a shadowy figure in a jeep, watched from a distance. He hadn't expected Traoré to face him head-on. But then, a surprise. The second group of local fighters Komparé had warned about appeared, not to attack Traoré, but to join him. They were led by Mariam, the cleaning lady. I was never one of them, she said, her voice fierce. I fed them lies to protect you. Traoré stared, stunned. The invisible woman had been his greatest ally, passing false intel to France, while warning his team. The tide turned. Komparé's men, caught off guard, began to falter. In the capital, Aminata's broadcast reached its peak. She revealed the defense minister's betrayal. His family was safe, rescued by loyal soldiers. He'd been coerced, but his confession exposed 50 more names in the traitor network. The rioters, led by Pascal Urago, the geology director, were arrested in the streets. Aisha, freed by Kwame and the students, grabbed her phone and kept streaming. We're winning, she cried, her voice hoarse but unbroken. The crowd roared, their flags high. At the border, Komparé made a desperate move, charging with his remaining men. But Mali's reinforcements arrived, their trucks thundering. Across the border, Komparé was surrounded, his mercenaries surrendering. Traoré faced him, the man France had groomed to replace him. You sold our country, Traoré said. Komparé smirked. You can't stop them, France will. Gunshot cut him off, not from Traoré, but from Mariam. For Sankara, she whispered. Komparé fell, the fight over. The climax came at dawn. Traoré returned to the capital, bloodied but unbowed. The suitcases were now in a museum, the National Independence Museum, open to the public. Aminata's broadcast had changed everything. Burkina Faso's gold revenues were funding schools, hospitals, jobs. The 17 traitors were in custody, their network dismantled. Dubois was sent back to Paris with copies of every document, a message to the world. Burkina Faso was free. Aisha and Kwame stood in the museum staring at the suitcases. This is our future, Kwame said, his father's memory alive in him. Aisha nodded, her live stream still running. We're awake now, she said, and we'll never sleep again. Traoré addressed the nation that night, Sankara's photo in his pocket. These suitcases weren't just gold or secrets, he said. They were our chains. We broke them. The crowd in Ouagadougou cheered, their voices echoing. Across Africa, Mali and Niger canceled foreign contracts inspired by Burkina Faso's courage. The United Nations debated the evidence, and even France's leaders admitted mistakes. The world watched as Africa rose, united. Years later, a little girl in the museum asked her mother, "Is our gold ours now?" Her mother smiled. "Forever, my love." The 17 suitcases had sparked a revolution, not just for Burkina Faso, but for a continent. Traoré, now a legend, always said, "I didn't win this. Our people did." And as the sun set over Ouagadougou, the land of upright people stood tall, free at last.